Hello everyone and welcome. This is the Lazy Historian. Imagine waking up with a headache, a rash, or simply stubbing your toe. Today, you'd likely reach for some ibuprofen and carry on. But in the past, that discomfort was often the beginning of something far worse. Throughout history, illness was met not with proven science, but with desperation, superstition, and, at times, pure guesswork. What followed were treatments so bizarre and brutal, they now seem like scenes from a historical horror story. Today, we are counting down the top 10 most nightmarish medical treatments humanity once considered legitimate care. Spoiler alert: most of them were elaborate ways to suffer, often publicly, before succumbing to the very illness they aim to cure. Before we dive in, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Let us know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, buckle up. History is about to get unsettling. You wake up in 1347 with a headache. It's the kind of ache that throbs behind your eyes and makes the morning light feel like judgment from a vengeful god. Maybe it's the moldy bread you ate. Maybe it's the bubonic plague. Maybe it's Tuesday. Either way, your neighbor hears you groaning and says you should get your blood let out. Because here, in the Middle Ages, bloodletting isn't just a medical treatment. It's the medical treatment. A one-size-bleeds-all miracle cure that's somehow worse than the disease. You shuffle through the muddy streets to find your nearest medical professional. But you don't visit a hospital, those are mostly filled with dying monks and prayers. No, you head to the local barber surgeon, a man whose qualifications include cutting hair, pulling teeth, and slicing open your veins with the same enthusiasm he brings to trimming your bangs. His tools are rusted. His hands are stained. His breath smells like pickled onions and regret. But he's got a basin and a blade, which makes him, terrifyingly, the most trusted man in town. He diagnoses you with an imbalance of the humors. Specifically, you have too much blood. The solution? Remove some, obviously. It's like draining oil from a car, except the car is your body, and no one knows how it works. You lie back in a rickety wooden chair. He wraps a leather strap around your arm and begins slicing a vein with a dull blade that may have last been used on a sheep. The blood begins to flow, not elegantly, not cleanly, but in jerky spurts. The goal is to relieve pressure, restore balance, and maybe appease the angry gods of digestion. You're woozy. Your vision swims. But that's good. It means it's working. Unless it isn't. If you pass out, he'll just splash some vinegar in your face and keep going. If you die, well, that's between you and God. But your relatives are told it was your fault for waiting too long to get bled. And it's not just you. Bloodletting is used for everything. Fevers. Drain some blood. Pneumonia. Drain more. Insomnia. You guessed it, time to bleed. Women with irregular periods. Bleed. Men with irregular moods. More bleeding. Children who look at you funny. Guess what's coming? Even kings aren't safe. Charles II of England suffered a seizure in 1685 and was promptly treated with over 50 bleedings in just one day. He died. But not from the seizure. Physicians argue over how much to drain. Some say a pint. Others say, until the patient looks pale enough to match the linens. There are charts for this, venesection guides, that tell you which vein to cut depending on the complaint. Sore throat. Try the median cubital vein. Hemorrhoids. Maybe the saphenous vein in the leg. It's like a treasure map for internal misery. And if leeches are available, even better. These slimy little vampires are plopped onto your skin to suck out the sickness. You can buy them by the dozen, like medieval band-aids with teeth. But here's the kicker, it doesn't work. Almost none of this does. Bloodletting has the impressive track record of making nearly every illness worse. People with infections die faster. People with anemia collapse. People with minor colds develop major funerals. Yet the practice persists for thousands of years. From ancient Greece through the Enlightenment, bleeding remains a pillar of Western medicine. Why? Because it looks scientific. There's visible action. Immediate response. And when it fails, the explanation is always the same: you simply didn't bleed early enough. So now you're lightheaded, trembling, and covered in someone else's hair clippings. The barber tells you to rest and drink something warm, like weak ale or onion water. Your wound is bandaged with linen strips soaked in herbs, which may or may not have been stepped on by a donkey. You stumble home. You still have a headache. You've lost a pint of blood. You've gained tetanus. And your neighbors applaud your bravery. Congratulations. You've just survived medieval bloodletting, probably. If the fever doesn't kill you, the infection might. If not that, then another round of bleeding. Because in the Middle Ages, the cure is often just a slower, more theatrical death than the disease. It starts with a headache. Not your everyday tension ache, the kind you get after too much wine or too many opinions. No, this one feels like your skull is trying to birth a demon. Throbbing, stabbing, relentless. And since you're alive sometime between 700 BCE and the Renaissance, you do what any rational person does when confronted with cranial discomfort: you drill a hole in your head. Welcome to trepanation, the oldest known surgical procedure in human history. Think of it as the ancestor of brain surgery, except without anesthesia, sterilization, or a coherent understanding of what a brain is. The logic, if you can call it that, is simple: if something's wrong inside your head, get it out. Headaches. Spirits trapped in the skull. Seizures. Bad air caught behind the forehead. Mood swings. Probably lunar demons. And what better way to relieve that pressure than by carving a nice little window into your cranium? You don't go to a hospital. Hospitals don't exist, and if they do, they are churches with beds and a strong odor of incense and unwashed feet. You go to a healer, shaman, or if you're unlucky, your neighbor who once sharpened a stick and called it a scalpel. There are no MRIs, no X-rays, just intuition and a vague hope that if someone survived it once, maybe you will too. You're sat on a rock, or a bench, or tied to something that smells like mildew. Your hair is shaved, your scalp scrubbed if they are being fancy with wine or spit. Then comes the tool: a sharp stone, a flint knife, or later, a metal drill. It's not electric. It's cranked by hand. And it sounds like medieval dentistry had a baby with a torture chamber. They begin cutting. First, they slice the scalp. Blood gushes, your vision swims, and you experience pain on a scale that makes childbirth look like a spa day. Then, they chip away at the bone, slowly, methodically, a little circle of hell etched into your forehead. No anesthesia. No sedatives. Maybe a herbal tea, if you're lucky. Most just bite on a stick and scream until their voice breaks. If you pass out, that's helpful. If you don't, your suffering is just more atmospheric. Eventually, they break through. There's a soft pop, like cracking an eggshell, followed by the exposed dura mater, the leathery membrane between your skull and brain. If they are cautious, they leave it intact. If not, they poke around. Maybe to let out spirits. Maybe just for fun. Blood pools in your ears. Flies gather. Someone's praying. Someone else is sharpening the second trephine in case they want to even things out. But here's the miracle: you might survive. Archaeologists have uncovered thousands of trepanned skulls from Neolithic Europe, Incan Peru, and ancient Greece. And many of them show signs of healing. People lived for months, even years, with holes in their heads, like prehistoric Pez dispensers. Why did they do it? Theories abound: treating epilepsy, migraines, and mental illness, releasing evil spirits, relieving intracranial pressure from injuries, or serving as a cultural rite of passage and spiritual upgrade via minor head renovation. The ancient Greeks weren't shy about it either. Hippocrates, yes, that Hippocrates recommended trepanation for skull fractures. His instructions included chiseling carefully to avoid puncturing the brain. Generous advice from a man who thought black bile caused sadness. In Mesoamerica, the Inca took things further. They had a 60 to 80% survival rate, possibly thanks to better technique, cleaner tools, or divine patience. European surgeons, meanwhile, fumbled around with bone saws and prayer beads. And don't assume this stopped in the Middle Ages. Trepanation was still practiced in the 19th century. Some Victorian doctors used it for head injuries. Others tried it for insanity. A few experimental souls even performed self-trepanation. Yes, that's drilling a hole in your own skull because you believe it will expand consciousness. Spoiler, it doesn't. You, lying on a straw mat with a hole in your head, are now considered treated. You're bandaged with linen soaked in herbs. You're told to rest. And if you survive, you're seen as spiritually purified. A living miracle with a breeze where your brain should be. But if infection sets in, and it usually does, you die sweating and screaming, the wound oozing pus and your thoughts unraveling like soggy parchment. There's no penicillin. Just cold compresses. And awkward apologies. So yes, trepanation is a real procedure. One that survived across cultures, continents, and centuries. It's crude. It's risky. It's painful beyond comprehension. But it's also one of the few ancient treatments that occasionally, miraculously, worked. The only downside? You now whistle when you think. It's the 1940s. The war is over, the world is reeling, and psychiatry is about to take a bold, ice-cold stab at solving human suffering. And you, unlucky soul, are about to be introduced to the lobotomy, the miracle procedure that takes your brain and gives it a personality lobotomy of its own. You're depressed. Or anxious. Or having mood swings. Or just inconvenient to your family. In this glorious new era of Freudian guesswork and pharmaceutical fumbling, emotional irregularity is a surgical problem. And the solution is to stab your frontal lobe with an ice pick. You're checked into a psychiatric facility. It smells like bleach and cigarette ash. The nurses don't smile. The walls are padded, but not lovingly. You meet Dr. Walter Freeman, a man with a medical degree and a fervent desire to shove pointy things into human heads. He's not a surgeon. That's important. He's a neurologist. But why let credentials get in the way of a good stabbing? Freeman co-invented the transorbital lobotomy, a streamlined alternative to earlier, more invasive methods. And by streamlined, we mean he goes in through your eye socket. Here's the process. You lie down on a table. There's no operating room. No scalpels. No antiseptic ballet of scrubbed assistants. You might be sedated. Or not. Freeman often prefers electroshock to knock you unconscious first, it's faster and cheaper. He takes a leucotome, a fancy term for a modified ice pick. He lifts your eyelid and wedges the metal spike against the top of your eye socket, aiming for the thin bone behind it. Then, using a hammer, he taps it through into your brain. There is no subtlety. He pushes the pick about 5 centimeters into your frontal lobe, then wiggles it around in a motion he describes as cutting the brain like a grapefruit. Sometimes he moves it side to side. Sometimes up and down. It's jazz surgery. He repeats the process on the other eye. 2 holes. 1 broken mind. You wake up groggy. Or not at all. The mortality rate hovers around 5 to 15%, depending on the era, technique, and how much Freeman is in the zone. If you survive, you're changed. But not cured. Some patients become docile. Listless. Easier to manage. Others regress into childlike states, wetting themselves, forgetting how to speak, or staring into corners with the glassy-eyed focus of a mannequin at war with God. But here's the kicker, this is considered a success. Lobotomies are marketed as revolutionary. Freeman goes on tour across America, performing lobotomies in hotel rooms, private homes, even on stage. He does drive-through brain surgery like it's a magic trick. At his peak, he performs over 3,500 lobotomies, including on children as young as 4 years old. One of his most famous patients, Rosemary Kennedy, sister of President John F. Kennedy. A difficult birth left her mildly mentally disabled. Her father, seeking a fix, signed her up for Freeman's miracle cure. The result, she spent the rest of her life institutionalized, unable to speak or walk properly. But Freeman didn't stop. He believed he was doing good. Saving lives. Freeing people from torment. And in a way, he was just not the kind of freedom anyone wanted. By the 1950s, antipsychotic drugs like thorazine emerged, making chemical sedation the new gold standard. Freeman's star dimmed. His procedures fell out of favor. And by the 1970s, lobotomies were largely abandoned, left to rot in the medical graveyard next to arsenic tonics and powdered mummies. But not before tens of thousands of people had their minds irreversibly altered. So now you sit in a chair, drooling softly, watching dust motes dance in the sunbeam you can't quite name. You no longer cry. You no longer scream. You are calm. Manageable. A vegetable with a pulse and a distant memory of who you were. You have been healed. You wake up with a rash. It's red, it's angry, and it's shaped like regret. Then come the sores, mouth, genitals, the fun zones. Soon, you're covered in ulcers that weep like disappointed parents. It's the 16th century, and you've caught syphilis, the sexy plague sweeping through Europe like a one-night stand that never stops calling. What do? You go to a physician. And by physician, we mean a man in ruffled sleeves who smells like lavender and blood. He takes one look and declares, with the confidence of someone who's definitely winging it, "Ah yes, venereal disease. Let's treat this with mercury." Yes. Mercury. Quicksilver. The metal used in thermometers, explosives, and planetary metaphors. It's now being slathered on your genitals. The treatment is simple. And by simple, we mean grotesquely theatrical. You're given mercury ointment, thick, metallic, and cold as betrayal. You rub it on your lesions. It burns. That's good. Pain means progress. The skin peels. The sores weep. Your mouth fills with metallic saliva and your gums begin to rot. These are all considered signs that the poison is working. If ointment isn't enough, you're given mercury vapor baths. You sit in a small, sealed room, like a Turkish bath built by sadists. A bowl of mercury is heated beneath you, releasing toxic fumes that rise and coat your skin and lungs. You sweat. You vomit. You hallucinate. This is celebrated as a healing crisis. Other times, you're fed mercury pills. Yes, ingested. Down the hatch with your porridge. The pills promise to purge the venereal poison from your body. What they actually do is attack your kidneys, liver, and central nervous system. You drool constantly. Your teeth fall out. Your breath could kill birds. There's even a saying, a night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury. It's funny. Until you're the punchline. This wasn't fringe medicine, it was mainstream doctrine for centuries. Paracelsus, the 16th century father of toxicology, called mercury a divine cure, which is ironic considering it killed more people than it cured. Doctors across Europe used it as the first-line defense against syphilis all the way into the 19th century. And if you didn't respond, that just meant you needed more mercury, or less blood, or fewer teeth. They'd adjust the dose until your symptoms stopped or your breathing did. This wasn't limited to syphilis. Mercury was used to treat everything from parasites to constipation. In 1810, the US Army issued calomel, a mercury compound, as a standard laxative. Soldiers lined up to be chemically disemboweled in the name of regularity. The irony? Mercury can cause salivation, tremors, memory loss, and madness. The same symptoms attributed to syphilis. So it became a circular nightmare. You're sick. You take mercury. It makes you sicker. So you take more. Until you're a twitching, toothless puddle of flesh whispering to invisible saints. Let's not forget the truly devoted. Some patients were treated for years. Decades. Their skeletons, when excavated today, show clear signs of mercurial damage, bone erosion, blackened teeth, and brain degeneration. Their tombstones should read, "Cured to death." And this wasn't some medieval superstition. Mercury remained a popular treatment into the early 20th century. Yes, the 1900s. People were still being poisoned in hospitals staffed by men with diplomas and pocket watches. What finally ended this reign of metallic terror? Penicillin. In 1943, it proved wildly effective at treating syphilis without melting your organs. Mercury was quietly retired, never officially condemned, just a forgotten. Like a war crime with good PR. So now you lie in bed, teeth gone, hair falling out, staring into the middle distance while your physician cheerfully scribbles notes and wonders aloud if you've considered prayer. You don't respond. Your tongue has fused to your palate. Your breath is flammable. But hey, at least your rash is gone. It's the 1800s. You've got a complexion problem. Pale isn't just it's the entire personality. A face like milk left in the moonlight is considered the pinnacle of beauty. But your skin has betrayed you with the ruddy hue of basic survival. What do? Easy. You drink arsenic. Yes. Arsenic. The toxic element best known for murder mysteries and rat extermination is also the go-to beauty supplement. Vitality booster, an all-purpose Victorian health tonic. You buy it at the pharmacy, openly and legally. Bottles have names like Fowler's Solution or Dr. Campbell's Arsenic Complexion Wafers. They come in elegant packaging and promise everything from clear skin to increased energy, as if turning your blood into a chemical wasteland is somehow rejuvenating. You start small. Just a few drops a day. The taste is bitter, metallic, with a hint of afterlife. At first, it does seem to work. Your cheeks lose their blemishes. Your skin smooths out. Your pupils dilate into an alluring stare that suggests you've seen the edge of reality and found it aesthetically pleasing. But then come the side effects. Your stomach turns. You start vomiting after meals. Your hair begins falling out in gentle clumps, like autumn leaves, but from your scalp. Your nails grow ridged. Your breath smells like a penny soaked in shame. Still, you persist. Because arsenic isn't just for looks, it's medicine. Doctors prescribe it for everything from anemia to asthma, neuralgia to syphilis. It's injected into muscle, dropped into drinks, and rubbed into skin. If you're feeling down, try a little arsenic. Tired? Arsenic. Lost your appetite? You know the drill. And let's not forget arsenic cigarettes, specially formulated to open the lungs and to soothe the throat. Smokers cough up blood with a sense of refined elegance. You start noticing the real changes after a few weeks. Your gums bleed. Your eyelids twitch. You forget names. You smell metal when there's none around. Your heart skips like a drunk trying to waltz. But that's fine. Everyone's a little sick. It's the 19th century, death is practically a hobby. By now, your insides are decaying faster than your corset can compress them. Your liver is shriveling. Your nerves are fraying. You're once flawless. Skin begins to flake. You look like a porcelain doll dropped down a flight of stairs. And yet, you're still taking it. Because Victorian society is addicted to appearance and nothing says upper class like slow, fashionable poisoning. And the medical establishment. They are in on it. Articles tout the benefits of arsenic, claiming it's a stimulant to the skin and circulation. They note, in passing, that the dose should be carefully monitored, but offer no guidelines on what happens when you're chugging toxicity like it's a morning latte. You're not alone. Arsenic consumption is common across Europe and America. In Austria, a group known as arsenic eaters brags about their stamina and glowing skin, attributing it to regular doses of white arsenic and vinegar. Tourists seek them out, like toxic influencers. Meanwhile, criminals are taking notes. Arsenic becomes known as inheritance powder. It's tasteless, odorless, and mimics common illnesses. A few extra grains in your tea, and your husband's bronchitis becomes fatal. Entire detective genres are born trying to figure out who's slipping what into whose porridge. Eventually, the truth creeps out. Doctors begin noticing the long-term effects: neurological damage, internal hemorrhaging, organ failure. Arsenic is phased out slowly, not banned outright, just replaced with less visibly horrifying alternatives. Like cocaine or radium. By the early 20th century, arsenic tonics vanish from pharmacies. Not with scandal or apology, just a quiet disappearance, as if everyone agreed to forget they'd ever sold slow death as a skincare routine. And you? You're left with shaking hands, patchy skin, and a look in your eyes that says, "I've seen the devil and he complimented my glow." But hey, at least no one called you blotchy. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where gods walk among pyramids, the Nile floods with celestial regularity, and medicine is a potent mix of divine whispers and organic horror. You, a common Egyptian with a suspicious cough and a swollen eye, shuffle into the healing temple, pale, sweating, and moments from your first encounter with therapeutic feces. Because here, in the land of Ra and papyrus, cow dung is medicine. Camel dung, too. Crocodile dung. You bet. If it excretes, it heals. You're greeted by a SWNW, an Egyptian physician-priest hybrid trained in both herbalism and supernatural incantations. He examines your eye with professional concern, mutters a prayer to Thoth, and casually prepares an eye salve made of fermented animal feces mixed with honey. You don't scream. That would be rude. You accept your fate because medicine, like the afterlife, is full of judgment you don't understand. He applies it gently, reverently, like a spa technician with a personal grudge. The honey is antibacterial. Modern science confirms that. The feces, however, are a gamble. Allegedly, the dung wards off evil spirits. What it actually wards off is dignity. If your problem is intestinal, the prescription shifts. Cow dung is now an oral treatment. Dried, powdered, and mixed with other pungent ingredients, it's taken as a laxative, antiparasitic, or general purgative. Egyptian medicine thrives on the theory of expulsion. If something's wrong, expel it through sweat, tears, vomit, or diarrhea. Bonus points if it smells like a cursed barn. But dung isn't just medicine. It's also contraceptive. Women seeking birth control are instructed to insert crocodile dung into the vagina, often mixed with honey and natron, a type of salt. This is meant to block conception. It likely succeeded in blocking a lot of things: joy, comfort, marital intimacy, but preventing pregnancy? That's an open question. And it gets worse. Infections are common. Antiseptics aren't. Wounds are treated with dung poultices to draw out the bad spirits. You can practically hear the staphylococcus applauding. Tetanus. A welcome bonus. But the priests don't stop there. They chant. Every treatment is accompanied by sacred recitations, because diseases are seen not just as physical ailments but spiritual disturbances, curses, demonic interference, or divine punishment. You're not just sick. You're impure. The logic tracks for the time. Ancient Egyptians believed the body was a series of canals, like the Nile, and illness came when those canals got blocked. Feces, being soft, malleable, and horrifying, were thought to loosen the blockage, physically and cosmically. The medical texts, the Ebers Papyrus, the Kahun Gynecological Papyrus, contain thousands of remedies. Some show advanced understanding of anatomy and diagnosis. Others read like potion recipes from a deranged druid. To cure a cough, mix donkey milk with lizard fat and warm it in the sun. For baldness, rub your scalp with boiled hedgehog spines. For a dying man, press his mouth to the anus of a healthy boy. You read that correctly. And yet, somehow, it kind of works. Ancient Egyptians were meticulous record keepers. They tracked outcomes, revised treatments, and employed an enormous pharmacopoeia of plants, minerals, and resins. They performed surgeries, stitched wounds, and even had prosthetics. But through it all, the dung remained sacred, smelly, ubiquitous. You, now blinded by infection and spiritually exhausted, are told the ritual was successful. You may feel worse before better, which is ancient physician code for we have no idea what we are doing, but the gods like it. Eventually, your eye swells shut. Your breath smells like camel backwash. But your soul? Probably fine. You die surrounded by chanting priests, your body full of honeyed dung and divine optimism. And your family? They thank the healer. They pay extra for embalming. Because in ancient Egypt, medicine wasn't just about healing. It was about balance between life and death, purity and decay, body and soul. And if it meant putting poop in your eye, so be it. It's the early 20th century. Science is the new religion, and radiation is its glowing, seductive miracle. Marie Curie has just isolated radium. The atom is cracking. The future is electric, magnetic, and irradiated beyond salvation. And you? You've got a mild toothache, chronic fatigue, or just feel vaguely underwhelmed by existence. Time to drink radium water. Yes, water infused with radium, the radioactive element that glows in the dark and slowly erases your DNA. It's sold under names like Raditha, Revigator, and Liquid Sunshine, marketed as an all-natural cure for aging, low libido, and general lack of sparkle. Literally sparkle. You will glow. You buy it in elegant bottles. The label promises rejuvenation. The contents promise decay. You sip it like champagne. You imagine your cells dancing with new energy. They are, briefly, right before they start mutating like carnival rejects. Your bones ache. Your hair thins. Your breath smells like pennies. But that's just your inner radiance manifesting, according to the ads. It's not just the water. Radium is everywhere. Toothpaste. For that iridescent smile. Face creams. For that literal glow up. Chocolates. Because dessert should kill you slowly. Jockstraps. For when your libido needs atomic encouragement. You sleep with a Revigator, a ceramic water crock lined with uranium ore. You fill it every night and drink it every morning. It's like brushing your teeth with a tiny nuclear reactor. The radiation seeps into your organs. Your skeleton starts to absorb it like a sponge absorbs nightmares. Still not enough. Try Thorotrast, a contrast agent for medical X-rays. It's loaded with thorium, another radioactive element. It gives doctors a clearer image of your liver right before it gives you liver cancer. And the world buys in. Prestigious scientists tout radium's regenerative properties. Doctors prescribe it for arthritis, anemia, impotence. There are no safety standards. No radiation protocols. The Geiger counter hasn't even been invented yet. You are the experiment and the outcome. Enter Eben Bias, wealthy industrialist and enthusiastic Raditha drinker. He consumes over 1,400 bottles in just a few years. His energy spikes. His sex drive soars. He tells newspapers it's a miracle. Then his jaw falls off. Literally. Necrosis of the mandible. Radium-induced bone death. His skull begins collapsing. He dies horribly in 1932, a radioactive husk who once believed in science like it was magic. His autopsy reveals radium embedded in every bone. His remains are so irradiated they are still hazardous today. His death becomes a scandal. Raditha is pulled. Laws are proposed. But the damage is done. And let's not forget the radium girls, young women who painted luminous watch dials in factories. They were told to lick their brushes to maintain a fine point. Day after day, they ingested radium paint. Their teeth fell out. Their spines collapsed. Their jaws disintegrated. One woman had her entire lower face removed during surgery. No anesthesia was needed. The bone was gone. When they sued, the company denied responsibility. It took years and several high-profile deaths before the practice was outlawed. And even then, enforcement was slow and corporate amnesia was fast. You, meanwhile, are glowing like a haunted nightlight. Your bones are filled with alpha particles. Your marrow is soup. You've developed anemia, cancer, fatigue, and the nagging realization that you paid for this. Doctors begin to panic. Studies pile up. The word radioactive slowly shifts from miraculous to catastrophic. Products are pulled. Lawsuits multiply. Radium goes from hero to villain in under 2 decades. By the mid-20th century, radiation is regulated. Bottles are destroyed. Watch factories close. But the glow never really fades. Some graves from that era still emit detectable radiation. The legacy of radium is a cautionary tale in glowing green. And you? If you're lucky, you die quickly. If you're not, you spend years deteriorating, a bright, brittle monument to hubris. But at least you were radiant. It's the late 1700s. The Enlightenment is in full swing, which means powdered wigs, anatomical breakthroughs, and an unwavering belief that reason can solve everything, including death. You, unfortunately, have just drowned. Or choked. Or fainted in a particularly dramatic fashion. But worry not, salvation is at hand. In the form of a smoke enema. Yes, you're about to be resuscitated not with mouth-to-mouth, not with a defibrillator, but with tobacco smoke blown directly into your rectum. This is real. This is official. This is medical history's most audacious combination of hope and horror. The theory. Tobacco is stimulating. It awakens the senses. It invigorates the organs. And what better way to deliver it quickly to the core of the body than via the most undignified route possible? Enter the resuscitation kit, kept along the River Thames by Good Samaritans hoping to revive drowning victims. These kits included bellows, pipes, and a tin of dried tobacco, the Victorian version of a defibrillator, except it goes up your backside. You are unconscious. Maybe dead. Maybe just mostly dead. Your savior springs into action, lighting a pipe and attaching it to a long rubber tube inserted, with ceremonial optimism, into your rear end. They pump. You do not breathe. They pump harder. Smoke billows into your intestines like you are being barbecued from the inside. If your lungs weren't full of river water, they are now full of second-hand shame. This isn't fringe science. It's backed by the Royal Humane Society, an organization founded in 1774 to promote life-saving techniques, including the one where your dignity is the first thing to go. Pamphlets recommend smoke enemas for drowning, respiratory failure, hypothermia, convulsions, apparent death. It's like CPR, except fire is involved and the patient can't give consent. You begin to twitch. Not from revival, from intestinal cramping. Your colon is inflamed. Your stomach rejects this experimental optimism. But the bellow wielder sees it as progress. They double down, switching from soft puffs to full blasts, believing more smoke equals more life. Eventually, if you're lucky, you cough. You splutter. You return to the living, gasping and confused, reeking of wet linen and burned Virginia tobacco. If you're unlucky, you simply become a roast with a pulse. Tobacco, introduced to Europe in the 16th century, was considered medicinal almost immediately. It was used for everything: asthma, toothaches, menstrual cramps, melancholy. And yes, as a stimulant to restart dead bodies. Because if something's wrong, set it on fire and see what happens. By the 1800s, smoke enemas are ubiquitous. Wealthy households keep bellows in the parlor, next to the silverware. Medical texts describe them with the same reverence given to leeches and blessed poultices. One guide recommends administering a pipeful every 4 minutes for at least half an hour. That's 8 doses of tobacco up your rear procession. Children weren't spared. Nor were the elderly. Nor were, in some cases, the already deceased. If you died, someone might still try to hotbox your intestines back to life. Eventually, the practice falls out of favor, not because it's absurd, but because science catches up. New research reveals that tobacco isn't a magical stimulant. It's a complex neurotoxin. Also, repeated rectal smoke exposure tends to destroy the lining of the bowel. Surprise! By the mid-19th century, smoke enemas are quietly retired. They vanish from medical kits. The bellows are rebranded as fireplace tools. And no one talks about it, like a collective trauma no one wants to claim. But the history remains. Etched in journals, etched in public rescue stations along the Thames, etched in the horrifying knowledge that for nearly a century, people believed the quickest way to bring you back to life was to turn your colon into a hookah. So now you lie there, half-conscious, smoldering like a Victorian chimney, and wondering what gods you angered to deserve this. And the doctor smiles. His breathing, he says, told you it would work. It starts with a toothache. Just a little twinge when you bite down on stale bread or chew your way through salted pork. But this is the 14th century, and pain is a language your body speaks fluently, often in screams. Your tooth swells. Your jaw pulses. Your mouth becomes a cathedral of suffering. You seek help. You are, after all, a humble peasant with 5 teeth left and a firm belief that God hates molars. You stagger into town to find someone, anyone, with a pair of pliers and a passing interest in oral sadism. You end up at the barber surgeon. He trims beards, sets bones, and moonlights as a part-time dentist. His hands are steady. His tools are not. He inspects your mouth and nods sagely. Toothworm, he says. You blink. Worm. Yes. Because in pre-modern medicine, toothaches were believed to be caused by tiny worms burrowing into the teeth. They chew, they gnaw, they cause pain. You, a human being, are now host to a medieval parasite that no one has ever seen but everyone agrees exists. To cure this infestation, your options are creative. The first and simplest, yank the tooth. No anesthesia, of course. You're held down by 2 relatives while the barber inserts a metal key-like instrument around the base of your tooth. He twists. He pulls. You scream like a boiled goat. Your tooth snaps. He digs into the gum with a curved blade to fish out the pieces. You pass out. He considers this a success. But say you're stubborn. Say you want to keep the tooth. Then it's time for smoke and sulfur. One method involves burning henbane seeds or donkey hair on a metal plate and funneling the smoke into your mouth. The idea? Smoke the worm out. If you're lucky, the smoke numbs the nerve. If you're not, it scalds your throat and makes you vomit. No one questions why the worm never emerges. Maybe it's shy. Another option, apply hot oil, vinegar, or a mix of crushed onions and sheep fat directly into the cavity. It sizzles. You shriek. The worm, presumably, dies of shock. In some Arabic texts, the recommended procedure is to heat a metal rod and place it on the cheek near the affected tooth. The heat transfers through your flesh, hopefully dislodging the worm. More often, it just cooks your face. And then there's trepanation of the jaw. Yes, you read that correctly. Some physicians misdiagnosing dental abscesses as demonic infestations would drill into the bone near the tooth to release pressure. You gain no relief. You do gain an infection and the opportunity to die violently over something as quaint as a cavity. The worm theory persists for centuries. It's found in ancient Sumerian texts, Norse folklore, Chinese herbal medicine. Even in the 17th century, dental scholars were debating whether the worms were actual creatures or metaphorical explanations for decay. You're offered charms to wear. Herbs to chew. In some cases, your tooth is filled with molten lead, not to seal it, but to poison the worm. You can imagine the side effects. Eventually, a German anatomist with a microscope fails to find any worms and declares the theory bogus. But by then, the damage is done. Millions have suffered and died from primitive dental treatments more painful than the illness itself. And let's talk hygiene. You don't brush. Toothbrushes aren't common until the 18th century. You chew twigs. You rinse with vinegar. You eat rotting food and drink mead through teeth slowly turning into fossils. Abscesses burst. Gums recede. Entire jaws collapse. And yet, the prevailing wisdom is that your teeth are haunted, not diseased. If you're upper class, your options are marginally better. You might get gold fillings or false teeth made from ivory, animal bone, or the teeth of dead soldiers. Yes, Waterloo teeth were a real thing, salvaged from corpses and transplanted into aristocrats. So when your lord smiles, he's probably borrowing a grin from a guy who died in Belgium. Eventually, modern dentistry arrives. Anesthesia. Sterilization. X-rays. But for most of history, dental care was a blend of folklore, torture, and ritual humiliation, a medieval screamfest with no exit plan. You, post-extraction, lie in a puddle of your own fluids. Your gums are shredded. Your faith in medicine is gone. But hey, the worm is probably dead. Welcome to the Age of Enlightenment, where men in powdered wigs lecture about reason while casually bleeding you to death. It's the late 1700s and you've caught something mundane, maybe a fever, maybe a cold, maybe seasonal melancholy caused by too much reality. Congratulations. You're now a subject in the most overconfident, overzealous, and overbloody chapter of medical history, heroic medicine. This isn't heroism like firemen and grand sacrifices. This is heroic as in the treatment is so aggressive it might just murder you faster than the disease. If your body's a battlefield, then heroic medicine brings cannons. You enter the physician's office, likely his parlor, because doctors still double as philosophers, amateur scientists, and furniture enthusiasts. He peers at you, pinches your wrist to assess your pulse, and frowns thoughtfully. Diagnosis: an imbalance of the humors. Too much blood, bile, or bad vibes. The solution: let's declare war on your body. First strike: bloodletting. Vein opened. Blood drained. Again and again. 1 pint. Amateur hour. Let's do 4. 6. 8. Until your face matches the wallpaper and your pulse is a whisper. You're dizzy. That's good. It means it's working. Not better. Time for a medics. The doctor prescribes a concoction of antimony and tartar to induce projectile vomiting. Not a little, but enough to make your soul consider exiting with your stomach lining. The goal is to expel toxins. The effect is a slow-motion internal carpet bombing. Still not better. Fantastic. Let's bring in the calomel, a mercurial compound. That's right, mercury again. We are back on that train, only now it's being used to induce purgation. That means diarrhea so violent your descendants feel it. And it's prescribed liberally. For typhoid, syphilis, headaches, depression. Feeling slightly off. Time to poop yourself into oblivion. Some patients are bled, vomited, and purged in the same day. The physician, nodding sagely, says it's heroic. You say it's a nightmare. He says stop complaining, you've still got another arm. There is no anesthesia. No germ theory. No understanding of microbes or cellular biology. Illness is seen as a moral failure. Pain is a purification ritual. Recovery is a fluke. Let's say you develop pneumonia. You're confined to a bed, covered in wool, and denied cold water because cooling is bad. You're given blistering agents, substances like cantharidin from Spanish fly. Applied to your chest, they raise massive blisters, which are then popped and drained. The logic: drawing out disease through the skin. The result: infection, agony, and a strong desire for reincarnation as a rock. You beg for mercy. The physician responds with an enema, his fourth that week. It's made of tobacco, milk, or urine, depending on his philosophical alignment. You don't ask. You just clench. This isn't quackery. These are the best doctors in Europe and America. Trained at prestigious universities. Writing books. Advising governments. George Washington, first president of the United States, famously died from this. He had a throat infection. His doctors bled him of almost 5 pints in 24 hours. They blistered him. Poured hot vinegar down his throat. Induced vomiting. He died faster than the infection could. Heroic medicine reaches its peak in the 18th and early 19th centuries. Physicians are proud of their aggressive methods. Subtlety is for poets. Healing is for the weak. And if you die, it's your fault for not having a stronger constitution. Eventually, the death toll becomes impossible to ignore. New thinkers, like Pierre Louis and the early evidence-based medicine movement, start doing something radical, counting outcomes. They find that aggressive treatments often kill more than they cure. By the mid-1800s, heroic medicine begins to decline. Slowly. Resentfully. Like a drunk aristocrat leaving a party. It's replaced by gentler therapies, the rise of germ theory, and the shocking realization that maybe less is more when it comes to evacuating every fluid from a person. But the scars remain. You, lying in a 4-poster bed soaked in sweat and self-loathing, surrounded by pewter bowls of expelled bile and blood, realize something profound: you're not being healed. You're being dominated. Because in heroic medicine, illness wasn't just a malfunction, it was a moral trial. And the cure was a trial by ordeal. So yes, you're alive. Barely. You've survived the ultimate medical ego trip. But at what cost? In the end, these treatments weren't just flawed, they were reflections of our deepest fears, our wildest guesses, and our relentless urge to do something, even if that something involved smoke, poison, or sharp objects in unspeakable places. We suffered in the name of healing. We experimented in the name of survival. And sometimes we survived in spite of our medicine, not because of it. So next time you complain about the taste of cough syrup, just remember, you could have lived. In an age where your prescription came with a side of crocodile dung and a hammer to the skull. Progress, as always, tastes better than it smells.